Hey guys, welcome back. Joe Brunsman, Insurance Broker to the Stars. Tonight, talking about a common trend I've seen that I wanted to warn you all about, and that is if you have a Hiscox E&O policy, that probably won't save your firm. So let me explain why. Now, go ahead, take a look at your own Hiscox E&O policy. It might look something like this. Now, it says professional liability E&O insurance. More aptly, we would call this more of a miscellaneous E&O policy. And I'm going to explain to you why that's important here in a second and show you why this is not the correct type of policy for your MSP. Now, broad brush here, Tech E&O, there's two sides you need to consider. This is what your MSP should have. The first is going to be E&O coverage. So that's your clients, your vendors, regulators, some other third party. They want money from your business. The other side of your Tech E&O policy is what you could consider cyber coverage. So it's effectively a cyber policy squished in there, and that would be for you. So that's money that your business has to pay, wants to pay, needs to pay, wants to be reimbursed for following some type of internal cyber event. Now, all of this really just boils down to the claim chain, and I'm going to show you why this is so important. So you render or allegedly fail to render some type of professional service. Because of that, a client alleges a wrongful act has occurred, and therefore they're going to bring a claim against you. So they could say, hey, we paid you to install this firewall. It was misconfigured. Because of that, the wrongful act is we got hit with ransomware. So now we're going to bring a claim against you. So all of this boils down to, on the first side of your Tech E&O policy, the definition of professional services. So if that part is screwed up, everything past that point, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many bells and whistles it has. It doesn't matter how great the services are. It all boils down to professional services. So if the professional services definition, or in your case, the technology services definition, often synonymous, if that doesn't match up with what you're doing, where a client alleges a wrongful act, there's not going to be any coverage for that claim, arguably. So going back to the standard Hiscox, I'll just call it a miscellaneous E&O policy. This is probably something that you would have, so it's easy just to look at the declarations page. And then what you're really concerned about is actually right here, and that is the technology services, IT consulting services endorsement. So let's go ahead and just take a look at that. So you'll see here, technology services means the following. So what is this? This is a named peril policy, not an all risk policy. This is named peril. And effectively it's saying, hey, Hiscox will only cover you for services that fit exactly within this list. Now, as an MSP, if I think back to my time as an IT guy, if I had to write down every single thing I could possibly do in a year, that's probably going to be way longer than this list. So I would encourage you, sit down, start thinking about what services are you actually rendering. So we'll look at cybersecurity services or services rendered through your RMM. Where do you think that's actually covered under this particular definition? Now, to give you a counterexample, this is more of what we would call an all risk policy. You'll see something like this. And it says, professional services means technology services and internet services for others for a fee. There is a third definition nested in here. But probably the most important part at the beginning is going to be technology services means IT services performed by you, that's an insured, for others, and then including but not limited to. So in contract law, there's this term called contra pro forentum. And that means ambiguity is held against the draftsman. So arguably what they're saying here, this is the insurance company because they wrote the contract. They're saying, hey, we can't possibly list out everything that would be an IT service or a technology service, right? Like here's some examples of kind of where we're going with it, but there's just too much to possibly list here. So unless we specifically exclude it or it's just so far outside the bounds of what an IT service would be, then arguably the insurance company is saying, hey, we're going to try and cover that. Now, if we keep going in this definition, you'll see internet services. And then if I move my face here over to the side, you'll see technology products. So as an MSP, I would say, hey, probably the first definition there, that's important because that's going to be more of like the MSP side of it. And then if you're a value-added reseller, that would be the technology products definition down below. All right, so moving my face back here. And okay, so this is from Understanding Insurance Law 6th edition, just to show you guys that it's not just me saying this. So under an all risk policy, that's the big long definition we just looked at. Any risk that is not specifically excluded is an insured peril. In contrast, specified risks, so named peril, that's like the Hiscox policy, generally afford narrower coverage. And that's a problem because MSPs do a whole bunch of different things throughout the year. Then he goes on to say the biggest advantage of an all-risk policy, so not the Hiscox policy, the other one, is the avoidance of gaps in coverage. Losses that would otherwise fall within the gaps between the specific risks are covered if a policy is all risk. All right, so I would just urge you, please go back and do this because this is going to be really important. Think about and write down all the services that you could potentially offer. Go back, compare that to your definition of technology services and say, okay, do you have a reasonable belief that you're actually going to be covered there, right? This is kind of the heart of the policy. Everything past that point is really just details as far as claims coverage is concerned. Once again, if we go back to the claims chain, if we don't get this definition right, everything past that point could just be a giant waste of money for you. And then if you're unsure about this, see competent legal counsel, leave a question in the comments below and I'll try and answer that for you as well. So unfortunately, the Hiscox miscellaneous E&O policy, it only gets worse. Why? You also have no internal cyber insurance coverage for your firm. So something like ransomware attacks, business email compromise, data breaches, other cyber events, those are just simply not covered under that policy. I've never seen an endorsement that provides cyber coverage there. As far as I'm aware, and I've worked with Hiscox for many, many years, they actually do not offer Tech E&O insurance to MSPs, and they do not offer cyber insurance to MSPs. So what does all this boil down to? This means, hey, you get hit with a supply chain attack, a ransomware event, a business email compromise. You guys are paying for that out of your own pockets. So that's a problem. That's a problem that you can have solved with an appropriate Tech E&O policy. Now, cyber coverage should look something like this. This is from a Tech E&O policy for another MSP that I have. But once again, Hiscox just doesn't have any of this. So you could pause the video here, just start reading down the list there. But obviously, some of these are going to be very, very crucial for your MSP. Now, the question I always get is, hey, can I just cancel my policy right now and buy a better policy? Probably not. If you're within a window, so if it's like 60 days, 30 days, 15 days or so before that Hiscox policy renews or whatever miscellaneous E&O policy you have, if it's within that window of say like 60 days before to day of renewal, generally we can try and do something there. But the primary issue here, it has to do with retroactive dates. So retroactive dates is effectively saying, hey, under this policy, we're going to cover work going all the way back to whatever that retroactive date is. And for some of you guys, that could be 5-10 years. So if you just cancel that policy and then you go out to buy a new Tech E&O policy mid-policy period, all that prior work you've done where a claim could potentially pop up, that's probably not going to be covered because the new Tech E&O policy is going to be what we call retro inception. All right. So most often you cannot just cancel it and buy a new one. It's something that we have to plan for. So likely you need to wait for renewal. So somewhere between, anywhere between, like I said before, 60 days prior up until the renewal date. That's really when you want to take a crack at this and do it the right way. Now, moving forward, just make sure you understand your Hiscox renewal date, or if you have some other type of E&O policy that's not appropriate, it's not a Tech E&O policy for your MSP, make sure you know that renewal date and you write that on your calendar so that about 60 days prior, you can go out, you can actually start shopping this, get the right coverage for your firm so you're not dealing with uncovered claims. And then just keep in mind, I've talked about this before, the right coverage will absolutely be more expensive for you. So please make sure you keep that in mind. All right, with that, if you found this useful, you learned something today, like, share, comment, subscribe. Right above me is another video that the YouTube algorithm will recommend to you. And if you click over there, you can subscribe to my channel. All right, guys, with that, stay safe.